Hi, guys. Welcome back. I found myself with a little bit of time, and there's also an auction, an online auction that is going on right now um, with Antiquorum, based, however, in Hong Kong rather than their headquarters in Geneva. And it's an online only auction, and there are many interesting pieces that are quite off the radar, that are quite uniquely shaped, that you don't see every day. So it's exactly up my alley. It's exactly the kind of watches that we try to cover, especially in the vintage sphere on this channel. So I wanted to have you over. I wanted to also do a show that's at a good time frame for people in the UK, people in continental Europe. So let's see how we fare. As always, feel free to just shoot your questions, especially if they relate to watches and style in some shape or form. They're always more than welcome. I don't consider it an interruption at all, even though the program seems to be very structured. I like the free flow of conversation. So, with that in mind, also please feel free to jump on the panel. I can always interrupt it, always do something else. So please feel free. So this is the auction I'm talking about. It actually ends on Wednesday, 10 a.m. local time for Hong Kong. So it has basically a little more than 3 days left. 3 days, 5 hours, 3 days and 5.5 hours, more or less. There are about 200 lots. I don't think I'm going to go through all of them for sure. But right off the rip, there are some very interesting pieces that I want to talk with you about. For example, this lot number 5, which is like a TV-shaped, ultra-thin, self-winding Audemars Piguet dress watch. Comes with a nice travel pouch and its original box. It's in white gold. Has that generation of ultra-thin Jaeger-LeCoultre based calibers, sapphire cabochon on the crown, just for good measure, Roman numerals, and very thin and elegant stick hands for the hours and minutes. No seconds hand, no date indicator, just pure old school goodness. The piece actually has a 38 millimeter diameter, and I think the case shape would lend it to a kind of wear that can be every day and not necessarily for very elevated or formal occasions. The estimate was basically somewhere around 4,300 to 6,500, 6,500 in US dollars. And it is currently being bid at the lower end of that estimate. So right around $4,300. I'm going to send the link. I'm going to send the link of the auction to the chat as well. So if you want me to highlight any particular lots, or if you want me to go back to anything of that sort, please feel free to direct my attention, especially with a super chat. That will be much appreciated. At lot 6, we have a reduced sized Audemars Piguet dual time watch. You would remember that a lot of the um, kind of out of the box complications, Audemars Piguet used to almost frequently execute in the reduced size case, which was at the time 36 millimeter, and in a way, it was very popular for a lot of the markets, and not just the Asian market, as people seem to repeat these days, because of the integrated bracelet design and the case shape. Of course, the 36 in Royal Oak wears more like a 38 or 39, pardon me, in more round shaped case watches. As I mentioned, around that time, Audemars Piguet used to do perhaps the chronographs and perpetual calendars in the 39 millimeter case, mostly um, sharing the same proportions as the jumbo, which was the contemporary. But these dual timepieces, namely the 25730 right here, were executed in the 36 millimeter. Almost immediately, you can tell kind of the timeline by looking at the dial. As we get closer to the present, you start seeing this Grand Tapisserie design on the dial, which has the larger blocks, whereas the earlier iterations, the earlier versions of this watch, the dual time Royal Oak, have that finer pattern of petite tapisserie. This piece comes, as you can see, with its original wooden box as well as papers. It's fully executed in stainless steel with that characteristic blue dial. It is roughly from year 2002, early 2000s in either case, and it has an estimate of 20,000 to 32,000 US dollars. There are currently no bids. That doesn't really surprise me, because a lot of these kinds of pieces, a lot of the very interesting, very appealing, very compelling Royal Oak versions have been in free fall since the market crashed, because they are simply less desirable by the mainstream customer, by the average collector, which of course presents a target of opportunity for those of us who appreciate them, who aspire to own one of them. So when it comes to the reduced size dual time, as we have here, which is 25730, or when it comes to the so-called owl, right, the moon phase day date, such as this one, which is again another reduced size, complicated Audemars Piguet Royal Oak, or perhaps the reduced sized time only. Sometimes these are called the baby baby jumbos or mini jumbos, such as this one, right? You start finding increasingly better and better deals. Um, would I say it is now the time to pick up any of these pieces? Hey, if you find them at a price point that aligns with your budget, and if this is the kind of watch you have always wanted, absolutely. Having seen these pieces about 5 years ago, going for dirt cheap, I don't necessarily have the stomach for it necessarily, not yet. But in either case, good deals are going to be increasingly easier to come by for these kinds of models, whether we are talking about the 14790, the reduced sized time and date Royal Oak, whether we are talking about the moon phase day date, or whether we are talking about the dual time in that same sizing, which is the 25730. Hey, Mitch, how are you doing, man? Continuing the same theme of Audemars Piguet, Lot 7 is a rectangular piece by them in 18 karat yellow gold, kind of a stepped stepped sides, like a two-layered rectangular case. The dial seems to have some humidity ingress, but it is not entirely lost. And as always, I want to remind you that one of the great things about Antiquorum is their rather precise grading system, which can be very educational, very informative when you're looking at these pieces from far. As always, for making purchases that are at a particular segment, I would always recommend that you at least reach out to the specialists, to the auction houses directly, maybe ask for more pictures, maybe ask for further details, for a more nuanced condition report. If you have the chance to actually take part in in-person previews, that's always the best way. There's nothing that replaces that hands-on experience and observation, whether it is about buying that particular piece or educating yourself for a future purchase. But in the absence of all that, they have a pretty good grading system, and they actually um, have a whole explanation of this too. So I want to share a link for that as well. So this is the link to their grading system. If you would like to take a look and see how they assess each and every part of the watch, the face of the watch, i.e., the dial, the case, the movement, and then they will assign the piece an overall grade. And of course, in each case, usually that overall grade has a lot to do with the with the provenance of the watch as well, right? Of course, they will be a little more strict with their grading of contemporary watches. They're not going to try to sell you something that is secondhand and that has been worn as unworn new old stock. So they will be much more precise in noting something like that. Whereas, of course, with a watch from 1940s or um, something from the earlier part of the 20th century, uh, there are sometimes understandable forms of aging and patina that um, that are justified. So in this case, the watch seems to be in a pretty good condition for its age. Therefore, they have graded it with the double A. The triple A is basically their highest grade. And there are some examples that they sign with their own initial, this stylized A of Antiquorum, which basically is their stamp of approval, is their way of saying this is the best example that we could ever source. One second, guys. All right, back to the scheduled programming. So this is a rectangular watch by Audemars Piguet in 18 karat yellow gold. There is a current bid that is right above the low end of the estimate, which was around $1,000. And the current bid is 8,500 in Hong Kong dollars, which amounts to around 1,100 in US dollars, with a little more than 3 days to go. There's a very lovely multimeter scale, Berthoud by Compax chronograph. It's a very stunning piece, if you ask me, in stainless steel. There's that minimal contrast achieved by how the chronograph registers have taken on the patina. I think those heat blued hands jump off really beautifully from the dial and from the chronograph registers as well. And you have on the periphery of the dial, of course, a tachometer, inside it, within a concentric circle, a telemeter, and finally, snailed in there, you have a simple pulsometer as well. No, I think that's just a seconds indicator, actually, but I can double check on that. Maybe it's just a scale or meter that I don't recognize. I feel like it's a countdown kind of thing, though. All right. In either case, this is a Berthoud chronograph in stainless steel from the 40s. It has the jumbo case of the time period, which is 37 millimeters. So quite similar to the jumbo cases from Universal Genève at the time. The condition seems quite good, though again, I would love to see pictures that are more close up, more detailed of the dial, especially from this angle and from these pictures. It does seem like a dial that is in honest, patinated condition rather than something that has been restored in some way, which would not be desirable for a piece like this, since you would want to value authenticity rather than something that is made to look like uh, something that it's not, right? You know, something that looks modern and overhauled rather than authentic as it should be from 1940s. And this chronograph is currently being bid at right around the lower end of the estimate. The estimate was 2,200 to 3,300 in US dollars. And currently there is a bid at 2,200. And that is a lot 11 Berthoud chronograph in stainless steel from 1940s. At lot 19, there's an interesting rectangular Cartier watch, a day date with quite a specific kind of Art Deco design, Arabic numerals that are almost randomly interspersed and divided between the outer periphery of the dial, where they uh, extend out like sun rays, and also the center of the dial, where they alternate basically with the index markers. There is at the center of the dial a pointer date, which is marked in red. Right under 12 o'clock, you have also an enlarged opening for the day of the week. You have small seconds at 6 o'clock. And finally, that railroad track that we a lot of times associate with Cartier that actually serves here as a minute track. And you can see both from the oxidization of the case and the kind of damaging and spotting on the dial that the watch has seen better days. But once again, I would always value authenticity rather than something that is fake and that is made to look like fresh out of the box rather than something that reflects its age. This is a piece in 14 karat yellow gold, a rectangular Cartier day date from around 1945. The estimate was 8,600 to 17,200, and it is being currently bid at 8,600. Of course, the movement, as is usually the case with mechanical watches from that time period of Cartier, is made by Gégé Lecoutre. So you can see some of the best in Swiss watchmaking in that post-war era, combined with some of the best in terms of jewelry design and accessory design from Paris, which makes it a very unique and desirable watch, if you ask me. That was Lot 19, a rectangular Cartier watch made by Gégé Lecoutre, a day date currently being bid at 8,600 US dollars with more than 3 days to go. Hi, JJ. Nice to see you, man. There's a more modern Cartier in this case. As you know, the roots of the Santos as a watch, as a piece of design, go all the way back to early years in the 20th century. Uh, it's a story of friendship. It's a story of utility, and it's a story of exceptional design in the way that it inaugurates really a new era in uh, wrist-worn timepieces, right? Since this was a watch that Louis Cartier designed for his friend Alfredo, if I'm not mistaken, Alfredo Santos Dumont, who was a, sorry, Alberto Santos Dumont, who was a gentleman pilot at that time and who needed a watch that he could wear on his wrist in the cockpit. So, 1904, it is at least the apocryphal date of the design of the watch. It was released for the public later. But on the 100th anniversary, on the centenary of that design, um, Cartier released this extra large, extra jumbo model of the Santos that was very elegant and that was matched with leather straps here in stainless steel. I think it's a beautiful piece. And of course, the that bezel design, which is quite distinct here with its polish as well as the exposed rivets on it, actually harkens back to that time, pardon me, that time in aviation in the early 20th century where you would have these riveted plates on the planes, right? So that's the element of design that Louis Cartier took into horological design, just as he took certain elements of a Renault tank to design what is perhaps even more popular as a wristwatch design that comes from the Parisian house. This is a Santos 100 XL in stainless steel. It has so far failed to attract any bids, but at lot 20, it has an estimate of 2,200 to 4,300 in US dollars, which is quite reasonable, if you ask me. Again, these are the kinds of watches that are not necessarily chased after by the larger public. So, as always, I'm not sponsored by any of these auction houses. I don't get anything if you get it from them. And many times you will find me suggesting, hey, I'm just using this for an educational purpose, for a platform for further knowledge, not the model, not the reference number. Um, Save it for your future searches, save it even on eBay and Chrono24 as a keyword, and they keep sending you, regular updates, as you know, via email when something gets posted. And eventually, with patience, with study, you'll find a great deal on one of these watches. So for the most part, I'm just highlighting a model. I'm just highlighting a certain category, whether it was how we started basically with ultra thin Audemars Piguet dress watches from the vintage era, reduced size Royal Oaks from the neo vintage era, or these sorts of more under the radar Cartier models, whether from the vintage era or from a little while ago, in a way that can't be even categorized as neo vintage. But this is not the latest and hottest Santos on the market, which has its dedicated group of enthusiasts, which has attracted, and I think rightfully, a lot of new customers and brought them into Cartier. But there's so much more in their catalog, I think, that deserves this sort of exploration, that deserves looking after minimally, because you can find great deals on them since no one else is looking. But in this case, lot 20, and especially since no one else has bid on it yet, may be a target of opportunity. As always, remember, be mindful of the condition. Ask for further information if you can, if you are not satisfied by what is already provided. And finally, always remember that in most instances, there is a buyer's premium, as well as potentially other kinds of fees which might be associated with importing watches into your own country. So try to figure those in when you're planning your budget for a given watch. Hi, Tim G. Nice to see you, man. There's a two-tone Santos from early 90s. This is 29 by 41, so quite reduced sized for today's standards in Santos. Be mindful of that. Um, it is a beautiful execution of the two-tone, though, that I really like. This watch has certainly seen better days, but just to highlight that, I think it's important. Um, when you have a two-tone Santos, it's usually the bezel that is rendered in the precious metal, which is usually yellow gold. And then you have the rivets on the bracelet, which are also in yellow gold, which I think is a beautiful touch. It is just one of those designs that lends itself so well to this particular execution. I think the Royal Oak is like that. Um, and so is the Nautilus. Admittedly, again, not one of my favorite watch designs whatsoever, but somehow there is something to be appreciated as to how those tapering center links in the case of the Nautilus and tapering interlinks in the case of the Royal Oak, and here the yellow gold rivets in the case of the Santos, that are an exceptional flourish for showing off that precious metal as an accent on the design. And this piece is right now being bid around $1,000. It does have a self-winding movement. It's not in a particularly enviable condition, as you can already see from the pictures, but sometimes that's exactly where the deal might be found. But buyer beware. This is lot 23, currently being bid at 7,500 Hong Kong dollars, which is almost a grand in US dollars. Now we have a stretch in the 40s where you have back to back to back a lot of interesting Gaillet and Gubelin pieces. I want to pay particular attention to them. these are the pieces that already have a group of people who appreciate them. They have been gaining in value on the secondary markets. I don't think they're the kind of pieces that will ever be hyped up. So don't look at them as some sort of investment or anything, but maybe as a target of opportunity if you appreciate the shape, appreciate the design, appreciate the functionality, and want to integrate a piece like that into your collection around this time. This is a triple date chronograph by Gaillet. Gaillet, again, from the mid-century period, was one of the um one of the foremost makers of chronograph watches. This particular piece is in decent condition, again, considering its age. It has a very uh, pure, very simplistic design on the dial that integrates two very utilitarian complications, a triple calendar and a chronograph. Now, the pushers for the adjustments can be an acquired taste, right? A lot of us prefer those to be quite subtle. Others appreciate, for example, the Kurt Klaus approach to this sort of complication, to the perpetual calendar, in fact, where everything is either delegated to a single crown or simply reduced to uh, a single pusher on the flank of the case sitting flush. In this case, you have these protruded um, pushers for the adjustment, which from a negative perspective, you can say stick out like a sore thumb. From a more charitable perspective, you might say they introduce some sort of quirky balance to the two pump pushers for the chronograph on the other flank of the case. In either case, I think this is a very nice and functional piece, very much of its time. Um, for those of you perhaps who might not be able to chase after Rolex Jean-Claude Killy or something, uh, this would do just fine. It's a completely different price segment. Of course, the pre-auction estimate was 2,200 to 4,300 in US dollars for this 35 millimeter triple calendar chronograph based on a Valjoux 72 movement. And this is being currently bid at, again, right at the lower limit of that estimate, which is $2,200. Again, you keep Gaillet in your crosshairs. They have this apocryphal connection to Jim Clark, since along with the Navitimer reference 806 and the Anycar Sherpa graph, he is said to have worn Gaillet Multichron, although there are no specific pictures where you can identify the watch on his wrist. But Gaillet is a lot of times known for that. And it happens to be Jim Clark's birthday today, so I wanted to remember that. And I should certainly post something on Instagram on this occasion as well. But in either case, I would highly recommend that you keep an eye on Gaillet, especially if you are looking for kind of utilitarian chronographs from that mid-century era. The entire Multichron series or Multichron series is absolutely a peach. I would highly recommend them. And here is an example from an earlier era, from the 50s, of a bicompax two-register chronograph with those lozenge shaped heat blued hands. Again, the dial has seen better days, but just to give you an idea of how these watches look, how they're styled, what kind of offerings that Gaillet has. I will pull up also a more enviable example of multichrome, so we can have uh, perhaps a better taste of what Gaillet can produce. So what Jim Clark is said to have worn was a Gaillet Multichrome 12. So something that's kind of look like this. I think his was actually the black dialed version of the watch, but since the entire story is apocryphal, I'm not even sure if it matters. But more importantly, in his time period, the watch would certainly run on a Vajou 72 based caliber, whereas this particular example runs on an Excelsior Park produced chronograph movement, which is a little different, even though it's also a lovely piece of kit with the column wheel as well. But I just wanted you to kind of have a nice picture of the design language uh, and absorb some of these beautiful contours of the case. I mean, this is just a very crisp and beautiful piece. And as you can see, the heat blued hands really pop off against that eggshell patina of the main dial. Coming back to the auction, the Gaillet bicompax chronograph in stainless steel and in a rather diminutive size, although that's quite normal for a 50s watch, of 34 millimeters. Uh, that is currently being bid at 5,000 in Hong Kong dollars, which amounts to right around 650 in US dollars, I want to say. Um, it is a nice piece. I don't like them as well as the later productions of Gaillet, especially the 60s pieces, the 60s multicrons, but still already that some of that aesthetic is there. The case dimensions can be really small. JJ was saying, I'm thinking of getting a gold chronograph. I have my Lemania CH27. Let's see if I have a short of it, if I have a wrist roll of it on my page. I think I do. I think I simply added it when I had first gotten it. I really like these, and you can get one of these um, around 2.5, 3K. I've gotten it for less, but uh, I'm a different kind of beast when it comes to haggling and scouring for strange kinds of deals. Um, but I love this. Like, I love the fact that you can get this sort of delicate, elegant gold watch simply because um, it's so minuscule by today's standards, um, at for a song still. And I think it's really a beautiful piece, very classic design, can really hang with all sorts of watches from its own time period, and carries that piece of horological history in it, which is the CH27 base. That is the base of the chronograph caliber Omega 321 that went to the moon. That is the base for generations of legendary Patek Philippe perpetual calendar chronographs. So you get to check a lot of boxes with a single watch. That's Lemania CH27 chronograph from the 1940s. But there are other options, of course. I'm just giving you an example. I want to take a very quick break here as I show you this Gubelin triple date, which will remind you of a Vachon Constantin Toledo, and I don't think that's a coincidence. And we'll talk about that right when I come back momentarily. Oh, by the way, yes, there are a number of jumbo omegas, especially that run on the Lemania CH27 calibers that are in 37 millimeters. Yeah, be on the lookout for them as well. All right, we're back as I try to hydrate myself a little bit. Mm. So, Gubelin, as you guys know, is a very storied watch retailer that is obviously from Switzerland. And they have over the years not only retailed some very prestigious brands, such as Patek, of course, uh, and many others, but also produce their own watches. If I'm not mistaken, they're still actually an authorized dealer of Patek Philippe, so that tradition continues. But of course, there was a period of time where they had even examples of Patek watches that were double signed by Patek Philippe and Gubelin. In either case, they also produced watches under their own brand, and this is triple dates with a moon phase that is in that um, famous square case that we have seen in many Vacheron Constantin watches in the past, especially the Toledo that was resurrected not too long ago in their Historiques collection. And uh, finally, also the one that was called in among collectors as chocolatone, since it looks like this square-shaped piece of chocolate. Right, this is what they call an ipsomatic, which was uh, basically their take on the triple date, triple calendar with a moon phase. And both in terms of its complication and in terms of its shape, this piece looks very much like its contemporaries by Vacheron Constantin. This is from mid 1950s in a pretty good condition. Again, the dial might look a little weathered, but I would much rather take something like that than something restored. Um, the head of Helvetia that uh, demarcates this as, or that identifies this as 18 karat yellow gold. And this delicious piece of horology at lot 44 has not yet attracted a bid, but the estimated price for it was 4,100 to 8,200. And once again, you can see the entire grading here, which is finally marked with AAA by Antiquorum, which is one of the highest ratings that they give to watches that they auction. We have another chocolatone, this time in a simple time-only configuration. In platinum, with this bezel that frames the dial, that is finished in a brushed grain, unlike the rest of the case, which is mirror polished. Once again, there is some effects, some um, rudiments of aging on the periphery of the dial, which can be expected, unfortunately, from a dial, from a watch of this age, of this kind of vintage. The dial is beautifully set in diamonds, and that's somewhat expected since this is actually a platinum piece. And you can see how the case has this sort of multi-layered architecture and a lovely curvature at the very top, which actually is accommodated by a domed crystal as well. So this is the kind of watch that is a piece of classic design and that would sit beautifully on the wrist as a dress piece as well. This is again platinum piece. The hallmarks there with the goat's head and the platinum mark, and another wonderful piece by Gubelin of Luzern, with a self-winding movement once more. And this is actually a piece, this platinum chocolatone with a diamond set dial made for Gubelin is currently being bid at the lower end of its estimate, which was 3,200. And that's lot number 45 with more than 3 days to go. Speaking of platinum Gubelin watches, here's another one. Once again, it's a platinum piece with a diamond set dial, alternating brilliant cuts with baguettes, Dauphine hands, a two-tone dial in uh, eggshell, and an hour track or with in kind of a taupe or gray color. It's in impeccable condition, really. And as you know, pocket watches are not as collectible as they once were, at least not by the mainstream of the horological community. That's why you can find sometimes great deals on pieces like this, which are otherwise very valuable, almost in impeccable condition. But hey, it is what it is, and this is being bid at the lower end of its estimate, which is $2,200 at lot 46, a Gubelin platinum pocket watch, 45 millimeters in diameter, with a diamond set dial from the late 40s, early 50s, being bid at 2,200 in US dollars. And finally, at lot 47, you basically have the pièce de résistance for those series of chocolatones in Gubelin's interpretation of the form. You have that beautiful square-shaped case with the domed crystal that is shaped like a square of candy, of chocolate. You have the stepped lugs that are stylized in a way that you would only expect again from Vacheron Constantin at the time. It really looks like the talons of a Maltese falcon more than anything else, which actually elevates, I think, this rather elegant design into another level. I'm not sure what is wrong with the face of the watch. It kind of looks like out of its axis. I'm not sure if it's an optical illusion, if it is simply a misprinted dial, which I hope not, um, because everything else about this watch, the condition of the entire piece, from the hands to the dial to the moon phase disc, with the straight end link and unique Gefrer bracelets. I mean, we have talked a lot of times about Gefrer as a bracelet maker. It is now integrated vertically into the Rolex manufacturer, but whatever legendary design you have in terms of bracelets, whether you are talking about the beads of rice bracelets for Hoya chronographs of a certain era, whether you are talking about the Rolex Oyster bracelets, if you are talking about integrated bracelets for the Audemars Piguet Royal Oak, for the Patek Philippe Nautilus, every time you end up going back to this prestigious maker of bracelets, this particular jeweler. And there you go. This bracelet is also a Gueffrère creation, and it goes very nicely with the overall vibe of the watch. Again, you have a triple date with moon phase at 6 o'clock, with the dates indicated with a pointer on the periphery of the dial, stylized Arabic numerals, and finally the day of the week and the month shown at 12 o'clock through these two openings as well. This is a Gubelin Ipsomatic chocolatone case with talon-shaped lugs on a beautiful Gueffrère bracelet with straight end links in stainless steel at lot 47. This piece is being currently bid at 33,300 Hong Kong dollars, which comes out to 4,300 in US dollars. And I think this is one of the pieces on the auction catalog. I would highly recommend that you decipher the condition report, because again, I'm somehow irked by the asymmetry, by the misalignment of the dial, which is not looking good, honestly. I'm also somewhat bothered by the fact that they didn't give it a final grade. So buyer beware. But this is a very nice piece and a very great example of the Chocolatone triple dates that Gubelin of Luzern has produced, in this case, in early 1950s. Now you have in the next one a Harald Schade creation. I don't really know the significance of this initialing right under the brand name, but what I do know is that these are triple date chronographs based on a Zenit El Primero movement with the moon phase. And here you have an example in 18 karat yellow gold. It's a limited edition piece of 150 pieces, 150 examples, and it is really a beautiful looking watch. Scales right around 40 millimeters in case diameter, so very traditional sizing for this kind of piece. It has already reached, and you can see how unique and interesting it is as a piece. It has already reached the high end of the pre-auction estimates, but it is a piece that is sold without reserve and is currently around 1,550 in US dollars. Not sure that you can find a triple date chronograph in precious metal for much cheaper. Now, I don't know how it will end up, where the price will be set at the end of the auction. There is, after all, more than 3 days to go now. But this is a piece that has great styling, and that also is based on an El Primero chronograph, a Bosch. So you get a great, again, a great watch, beautifully designed, with lots of utility between the triple calendar and the chronograph. I love that combination, as you guys know. I have it in my Universal Genève tri-compacts. And this is also a watch that's more, perhaps a little more of a contemporary styling than that, a little more of Patek end of the spectrum, rather than the more utilitarian workhorse approach that the Universal Genève has, especially in stainless steel. But I really like this, especially due to the Arabic numbers on the dial, which remind me of Patek chronograph or perpetual calendar chronograph more than any random brand. At lot 53, we have a very beautiful stainless steel IWC three-hander, Arabic numerals at the quarters. The dial fixtures have this gilt look with a beaded track for the minutes and seconds. The watch is otherwise in stainless steel, kind of an eggshell patina or a cream-like patina on the dial. The teardrop lugs, I think, give the watch a very distinctive shape and quite a presence at 36 millimeters. So probably looks larger than life, so to speak. And it is in great condition. I really like the IWC dress watches that have the caliber 89, as is the case here. You can find them in a number of different case designs and case shapes. I am partial to the teardrop lugs. Honestly, they give, I think, a very distinctive presence to the watch. But there are other shapes and forms. You can always email me and I will try to direct you to the kinds of pieces you would be interested in. But I really like this particular example. It has so far failed to attract bids at lot 52. And the estimate for it was 2,700 to 5,400 in US dollars. Great condition, a great piece of design, a very simple dress watch, which would be great for everyday wear and also perhaps for more elevated occasions as well. That's an IWC based on a hand-wound caliber 89 at lot 52 with an estimated value of 2,700 to 5,400 in US dollars on this Antiquorum Hong Kong online only auction that is ending in a little more than 3 days. A similar piece on a different caliber, but with the kinds of stylized lugs that we today almost exclusively associate with Vacheron Constantin. These are the Corne de Vache lugs. A great time-only watch again with an oversized small seconds sub-dial at 6 o'clock. Otherwise, very minimalist, um, delicately printed Arabic numerals, very fine stick hands for the hours and minutes as well. A nice off-white dial and an 18 karat pink gold case. A crown that sits flush on that case and great condition. Again, the watch has a lot to recommend, a lot to offer. It has so far failed to attract any bids at lot 53. This IWC hand-wound dress watch in 18 karat pink gold has an estimated value similarly to its counterpart in steel between 2,700 US dollars to 5,400. We have kind of a UFO shaped IWC this time, a time and date piece, kind of a pebble of its own kind in stainless steel, original buckle, possibly the original strap as well, though I can't really say that. But oh yes, yes, original crocodile strap, original IWC steel buckle, 70s, looks pretty pristine. It's has again failed to attract any bids, has an estimated value of 1,100 to 3,300 in US dollars, and comes basically as a full set down to the tag. I think it's a very cool piece of design, very quirky, very unique. At the lower end of that estimate, it could be a fantastic addition to a certain kind of collection, especially if you are aiming towards these sorts of segmenting designs in the industry language, in the marketing lingo, or simply uniquely shaped, formed watches rather than your regular Oyster, Calatrava, and those kinds of more round-shaped, conventionally formed cases. This is a fantastic piece at lot 54, an IWC unidentified flying object flying into the present from 1970s with an estimated value of 1,100 to 3,300. We have a rectangular IWC that seems to have attracted already a couple of bids. Well, I don't know why I said rectangular. It's a perfect square, actually. Again, if you are a connoisseur of these sorts of shaped watches, this is perfectly 32 by 32. So rather diminutive, but probably would make for a very elegant dress watch in 18 karat yellow gold. It does have a kind of sun-like design for its style, a very circular beaded track for minutes and seconds at the center of the dial, and the index markers are laid out as if they were the rays of the sun. So it's actually quite an elegant piece, and the square case shape is actually not blocky at all because it has this sort of step design, very much like the chocolatone that we're talking about, but of course a little different, a little more circular. It does have a roundly shaped automatic movement in it. So for those of you care for that kind of detail, that might be a no-no. This piece was being sold without reserve, with an estimated value of 1,050 to 1915 US dollars. Currently, it is being bid around $500 with more than 3 days to go. So could be an attractive proposition at the right price point if you are, once again, a collector who tends towards more unusually shaped pieces, be it rectangular, square shaped, or more unusual. Um, this is certainly an interesting option from IWC from the 50s. We have, speaking of which, we have a more conventional IWC, a Mark 15 from the early 2000s in a two-tone silver dial. The broadsword hands, very useful utilitarian three-hander watch, designed in the tradition of those time only or time and dates pilots watches that IWC is well known for. Arabic numerals with an oversized triangle at 12 o'clock and a date indicator at 3. The piece comes with its box and the warranty card, as well as the instruction booklet. Mark 15 from IWC, early 2000s. At lot 57, the piece so far failed to attract any bids, but that is actually good news if you are interested in it. If you happen to be chasing after something like it, because for now, with an estimate of 1,650 to 2,700, it has more than 3 days to go, but no bids on it. So it could be something you could grab and run, that you could snipe at the last minute, perhaps. 38 millimeters in stainless steel and on a matching 5-row beads of rice bracelets. I think it looks quite stunning and very good for everyday wear. At 58, you have the IWC Porsche design, of course, with this sort of integrated look in titanium case and bracelet, proudly marked at 6 o'clock right here at that first end link as Titan, titanium. As you know, this piece was made for Porsche design over the years by many different Swiss makers. Among them was IWC. There was also those made by Orfina and even Eterna and some others. But these are quite nice and rather desirable increasingly. After all, the piece just celebrated its 50th anniversary last year, and Porsche Design celebrated that anniversary for a number with a number of limited edition watches, and increasingly there's an interest for titanium sports watches. Increasingly there's an interest for this sort of um, blacked out or largely monochromatic sports pieces that seem to be an element of style in our time, in here and now. So they have attracted more interest recently, and this piece, with more than 3 days to go, at lot number 58, IWC Porsche design chronograph, fully executed case and bracelet in titanium. It is being bid at around 1,750 in US dollars. It has some ways to go, I think, but could still be a decent deal when all is said and done. You have a you have a nice 3-register chronograph in that classic Vajou based layout. The self-winding cam switching version, of course, at the 6/9/12, and you have the date with German days in this case at 3 o'clock as well. Tachometer on the chapter ring, and chronograph seconds with that red accent centrally deployed. Again, people love that bracelet when it's on the Mose Streamliner. So it's the same bracelet, same maker. Why not? Porsche design is a great watch as well, the Porsche design chronograph. Of course, it's horologically speaking, this watch is not as interesting as the Mose Streamliner chronograph. Don't take me wrong. Um, the piece of kit is actually pretty humble. What is identified as caliber 790 here is, of course, basically a Valjoux 7750, which is the definition of um, everyday workhorse, nondescript, self-winding chronograph caliber. So it is what it is. But as a piece of design, this is a very nice watch and has that integrated look. It is in titanium. It has both IWC and Porsche design on the dial, so can be desirable in so many ways. I'll go for another half hour or 40 minutes or so. So if you have any questions, any requests, feel free to send them in. But if you have learned anything from the show, if you have liked it so far, please hit the like button. That really helps me. That increases my exposure, and I absolutely need it. I am absolutely desperate for it. I do want more eyes on this channel, and I feel like I put the work for it. So please help me reach more people. Hit the like button. It doesn't cost anything, but it would be actually very generous of you. And with that in mind, subscribe if you haven't already. I'm here with watch content every day for you. And send it out. Share it far and wide. Tell all your friends. I have all sorts of content here, not only live streams. So if you want to tell your friends, there are interviews, there are shorter videos, takes on some new releases or some developments in the industry. It would be fantastic. At lot 59, we have another chronograph. This time it's Gégé Lecoutre,
of course, at 35 millimeters. It's not particularly modern, but as a piece of classical design, I think it has a lot to recommend itself for. It's a multimeter scale. Again, you have what has now aged into a very nice shade of blue on the periphery of the dial, a tachometer snailed right in there, or rather in a concentric circle. You have the telemeter. You have also, of course, a fifth of a second scale at the center of the dial, the traditional bicompax layout with continuous running seconds at 9 o'clock and a 45-minute totalizer at 3 o'clock. Heat blued hands against that off-white dial, and the numerals and indices that are cut out into the dial. The branding is only GG, but that's a market kind of designation. This was apparently the property of a Swiss gentleman once. At lot 59, this Gégé Lecoutre bicompax chronograph has so far not attracted any bids, but it has an estimated value of 2,200 to 4,300 in US dollars. Thank you, JJ. I really do appreciate you. You have been a great supporter of this channel. I can't thank you enough. At lot 71, we have a very interesting Lemania dive watch. You don't see these every day. You have a 24-hour scale on the Reho. You have, of course, this fifth of a second scale for the seconds, and of course for the minutes as well. Arabic numerals at quarters. Rest of the indices are loomed, anti-magnetic case, a rotational bezel that's graduated for the first 30 minutes. Unfortunately, a case that seems to be polished to bits, but otherwise a very unique watch. I have perhaps seen in my entire 2 decades, looking at watches, studying watches, maybe another Lemania diver watch. They're not very common. At least they haven't made it to the US in large numbers. Perhaps in Europe they might be easier to find. But in either case, this is a piece from the 70s, apparently, around 39 millimeters, very distinctive, very unique. Of course, in stainless steel. I am guessing with a self-winding movement, even though that's not very specified. I really love the way that the bezel insert has aged into this shade of navy rather than the original black, which gives it a very original look, a very different kind of look against that off-white dial. I think this is a great piece and probably will fly entirely under the radar, but the pricing is not extremely attractive either. So that's one thing I would want to note. At lot 71, this Lemania diver's watch from the 70s is priced with an estimate of 3,200 to 4,300 in US dollars. it has so far failed to attract any bids. Oh, Basil, thank you so much, my friend. Thank you. Thank you with the cool glasses. Um, nice to see you guys. Fries, my regards to Brussels. You are constantly shuttling back and forth between there and Geneva, so you confuse me sometimes, but it's good that you always note where you are and what you're doing at that time, and I'm grateful for it. Um, oh yeah, I mean, look, that's what I meant to say, Fries. I have seen a lot of Lemania chronographs in dressier and sporty versions, but not a time only dive watch, except for once. So it's very, very fascinating to me when I see something like this, because Lemania I usually associate with their chronographs, usually more classically styled. I have seen even watches that look like the Broad Arrow Speedmasters, that are branded Lemania with the CH27 movement with the two registers. Um, but yeah, the dive watch I've only seen once. I don't think it had a white dial, unless I'm getting confused here. But yeah, this is something like this. In this particular configuration, it's the first time I see it, but I'm sure they are more numerous in Europe, anyways. But you know, it be like that sometimes. There are a lot of interesting Longines. I will pass over them simply because I have less than 30 minutes left, but you can always send a lot number in for me, and I would happily check it out for you and take another look. This is an Omega piece with a caliber 13. We were talking about Lemania. Just so you know, this is not a Lemania based movement, but what a beautiful two-tone dial with what probably originally was black hour track, but again, the patina makes it look more like deep blue, almost like a navy rather than black. Uh, the curvature on this minute hand is amazing. Of course, you can see this sort of attention to detail in the chronographs from those time periods, where they are basically accommodating for the curvature of the crystals, and the extension of certain indicators and hands. This is a beautiful watch, nicely balanced, two register chronograph, beautiful lugs that still have a lot of life left in them, even though they seem to have been polished, kind of like the spider lug design. Two-tone dial with the tachymeter indicated on the periphery in uh, red, and a wonderful case with the lugs drooping in this beautiful stylized way. The counters are great too, oval shaped. This is a fantastic stainless steel chronograph from its time, which is the 1940s. Um, it will be minuscule by our standards, around 33 millimeters probably. And it has so far failed to attract any bids. The estimated value seems rather high for my taste, but you know, This is something they decide in-house and along with the consigner. So who am I to say anything? In US dollars, the estimates for lot 86 Omega bicompax chronograph is 6,400 to 12,800 in US dollars. Lot 86 in the Antiquorum Hong Kong online auction, online only auction, that is going to conclude in a little more than 3 days. Here's another chronograph, again, based on the same Vajou 13 from around the same time. The case looks very beautifully preserved. Again, probably very small by our standards today. Um, the dial and the handset, etc., has seen better days, of course, but here we are. This piece is currently being bid at $6,400. Just so you know how much certain Omega chronographs from that era, whether they're based on Vajou 13 or later Lemania CH27, they are quite valued by collectors. This is a very nice piece as well. It was lot 89. At lot 106, we have a square-shaped Patek Philippe with a guilloche dial and guilloche case that is entirely decorated with the gadroons, right? Just like Dupont lighter, for example. 18 carats yellow gold. I think this is a beautiful piece again, kind of a Patek tank in a very unique style. This is a reference 3467 from year 1962. And it has an estimated value of 5,100 to 9,000 in US dollars. Comes with the Patek archival extract. It has so far failed to attract any bids at lot 106. And guys, remember, this is what I'm talking about when I try to introduce another perspective to the state of the market, right? Sometimes people look at how Philips has one white glove sale after another, how certain kinds of hype pieces are still flying off the shelves and trade for multiple times their retail price on the secondary market. But you get a better sense of where the watch market is trending towards from these sorts of average pieces that are still unique, that are still collectible, that are still desirable in some ways, but that don't necessarily appeal to the mainstream collector, that don't provide the flavor of the month. So you get a better sense of how certain pieces are not even bid on in these sorts of auctions. You can get a better sense of the market from that, then you can from how a stainless steel Royal Oak with an open worked dial is being sold for on the secondary market. I mean, that's not, you cannot judge how well your neighbor who paints in his home studio is doing by how much Basquiat sells for on an auction, right? That's just not how the world works. But somehow, a lot of influencers, as well as gray market profiteers who run social media platforms, have tried to literally trick and lie to people to make the market seem healthy so they can justify their overinflated pricing on certain models. Don't fall for it. This is lot 108. Again, a beautiful Patek rectangular watch. These pieces sit beautifully on the wrist because they have great curvature both on the case and the crystal in 18 karat yellow gold, as is also testified by the head of Helvetia that is embossed on the case back, I should say. Great movement, of course, with the Geneva seal, as a Patek watch should be. And this piece with the Bombay crystal in 18 karat yellow gold with a rectangular case, the proportions of which are 39.4 by 26 millimeters, is being currently bid at the lower end of the estimate at lot number 26. It is for now standing at 5,300 in US dollars with more than 3 days to go. This is a Patek Philippe reference 2476 in 18 karat yellow gold. Thank you, JJ. $2. Thank you. You prefer Banksy. I like Banksy as well. I do adore Basquiat. I actually like more, very modernist artists like Francis Bacon, like Lucian Freud, like Egon Schiele. But anyway, I'm a big fan of Banksy as well. I like the political charge and the impetus that guides his art for sure. Fry says, I'm in talks for a 1963 165.024 Seamaster 300 with a Mark I bakelite bezel and rare Swiss-made dial. I would like to see an example of that. Let me see what I can find off the internet very quickly. If it is something we can share with our viewers. Let's see. Mark 1. Is it the big triangle dial as well, or small triangle? I mean, I like them both, but I'm kind of partial to the big triangle just because, not because it's one thing or another. It just gives me that mil spec vibe a little more fully. I hope you get it. I mean, this is by and large, this is an amazing watch. I mean, look at that. The bakelite bezel really looks amazing on this. Yeah, time only, great balanced piece. Man, that is the kind of watch that, oozes with charisma, and you have to admire how that triangle is completed by the cut triangle at 12 o'clock with that luminous plot. They have uh, they have designed this watch very carefully. So no big T. Well, I mean, it's not, doesn't have to be military issued. No worries. But yeah, it looks great. Baton hands. Let's see if I can find an O24 with the bakelite bezel. I don't know. I don't know. If you have a picture, and you can send it to my email, prize, I would really appreciate that. And then I can share it with the viewers. If you would, if you don't want to, that's quite all right too. I don't, no pressure. Um, especially if you are in negotiations for a particular watch, maybe you don't want to give away the certain details for it. Um, I would understand that. But if you can get me the picture in the next 10 10 15 minutes, we can certainly share that. We can certainly look at that. But let's take a look at a few more watches from this Antiquorum auction that's ending in a little more than 3 days. It's an online auction based in Hong Kong, but conducted online only. And here's another Patek watch that's quite unusual. It's a 20s piece with these officer type lugs that look soldered on the case, right, in that kind of trench style. An Art Deco cushion-shaped piece with those enlarged Arabic numerals and cathedral hands. Not a Patek you see every day. The dial itself has seen better days, but then again, for 100-year-old watch, basically, doesn't look all that bad. This is being bid at currently at 4,300. It is a hand-wound, cushion-shaped, 18 carats yellow gold piece in an Art Deco officer type styling. That is lot 108, a Patek Philippe from the 1920s, being bid at 4,300 in US dollars with a little more than 3 days to go. Okay. All right. Thank you for sending the picture, Fries. I am gonna open it separately and share the visual only, so I don't in any way disclose your identity or dox you, as we say in this sphere. But that looks like a beautiful watch indeed. There we go. Baton hands, the bakelite bezel, that balanced style with Arabic numerals at quarters, the spare-like second sand as well. That's an interesting choice for a strap, but I don't hate it. I don't hate it. Um, yeah, and those twisted lugs that distinguishes the Huguenot frère case maker at the time, which of course made cases for Seamasters, for Speedmasters, for Universal Genève, pole routers, and so many other models. Yeah, what a great watch. I hope you get it. It's a beaver tail strap. All right. No comment, no judgment. Not my jam, certainly. Um, Lot 109, I think I have time for maybe 2 or 3 more watches. This is again a rectangular Patek Philippe that kind of looks like what Cartier makes as tank chinoise with especially these particular details at 12 and 6 o'clock. But the case itself is much more curved. This is a reference 2531, all in 18 karat pink gold. The dial has certainly seen better days, but it is what it is. Again, you have a watch here that has spent more than 70 years. So on someone's wrist, it has an extract from the archives. I think it's a beautifully designed piece that would probably wear well as well, since it's 26 by 41. So a nice presence on the wrist too, with that curved Bombay crystal. It is currently being bid at the lower end of that estimate, which is 5,300 for lot 109. The Magician. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. 10 pounds sterling. I appreciate you, man. And Mike David, thank you for sending me your nice wishes and greetings from New Zealand. Thank you. All right, we have another 10 minutes. So if you have any particular requests, please do share. A lot of interesting Patek Philippe watches that are uniquely formed in this auction. I would highly recommend, again, that you take a look at this auction. Once again, in 18 karat gold, this time yellow gold, an hourglass shape that is also not all that far in terms of its styling from the Eiffel Tower reference, or the so-called pagoda reference, which Patek ended up reissuing as a special edition, as a limited edition for the collectors. So this particular one looks great, and I think the condition has already attracted a number of people. What a beautiful piece of design, honestly. As you can see, the reason that similar designs are called the pagoda is because they have a similar base structure to these tiered tower style architecture from East Asia, or alternatively, that's the 4 lugs of the case kind of interpolate the base of the Eiffel Tower, right? This is not the particular reference, though, that is called the Eiffel Tower or the pagoda. That's reference number is actually 2441. It's kind of stubbier or more shrunk, you might say. And I think it was reissued as reference number 5500 as the pagoda. But in either case, this reference 1593 is close enough, and it looks beautiful in its own right anyway. So who cares if it's Eiffel Tower or pagoda? From late 40s, 41 by 25. Again, a very unique piece of design, already being bid at 8,500 in US dollars, 8,500 with more than 3 days to go. Lot 110, an hourglass shaped Patek Philippe 18 karat yellow gold watch from late 40s with more than 3 days to go. It is currently being bid at 8,500 in US dollars. Only 5 minutes left, guys. I will share with you a couple of other watches and then I will have to take off. Please hit the like button on your way out. If you have any last minute questions or demands, feel free to send them in with a super chat. Lot 115. Another Patek Philippe rectangular watch, kind of a pink on pink styling, kind of a Patek Philippe, tank again with the curved crystal, with the curved structure of the case, which remains, by the way, quite pristine, especially considering its age. This is indeed 2461, which is once again in that same family of watches that are sometimes called Eiffel Tower or pagoda by collectors. But this is, I think, much more strictly rectangular than those as we have just looked at, that have more of an architectural base with lugs that kind of flare out. In this case, you have a watch from early 1950s with salmon colored dial. Apparently the case is yellow gold. I guess the oxidization and the patina fooled me there a little bit, and I thought it was pink gold, but it does look quite nice in its condition, especially if you look at the finishing elements and the crispness of the hallmarks here and here. The crystal is cracked. The dial, of course, has once again seen better days, but it's still a beautiful looking watch. And it is currently being bid at lot 115 for US dollars 4,300 with more than 3 days to go. This is a Patek Philippe 2461 with a beveled bezel, with the nickname Tegolino, pink salmon shade dial, 18 karat yellow gold case, a beautiful Patek Philippe reference 2461, currently being bid at 4,300 at the Antiquorum Hong Kong online only auction that will end in a little more than 3 days. Oh, this is MLMJ. Thank you, man. It's nice to hear from you again. I haven't seen you in the chat for a while, but thank you for keeping up with what I'm doing here. And thank you for your most generous support. I appreciate you. All right. One more watch, and then I take off. I just can't leave you guys. You see? I think I will leave you with a unique Rolex chronograph that is at lot 123. pink on pink, made for the Milano-based jeweler Ronchi, which is marked on the dial. 18 karat pink gold case that has this perfectly round shape, which looks very unique for a chronograph of this sort. The heat blued hands look just perfect. The dial has the kind of humidity ingress and the spotting that would be caused by that over time. But in either case, I think this is a very handsome looking watch, and a very unique piece of design, as you can see, in terms of the case shape. And I think the dimensions of it are a little small at 31 millimeters in diameter, but it would still be a fantastic watch to wear. Certainly a collector's piece, certainly a connoisseur's piece. This is a Rolex reference 3233, an anti-magnetic uh, chronograph, pink on pink, 18 karat pink gold case, Salmon dial, the so-called moneta. This is currently being bid at the lower end of its estimate, which is 10,600 in US dollars, with more than 3 days to go at lot 123. Guys, thank you so much. I really appreciate you. Thank you for being with me for these couple of hours. It's always a pleasure to talk watches with you. It's always a pleasure to uh, go through these auction previews with you, both to learn about the state of the market, but more importantly, to delve a little deeper into the horology and history behind these watches, just so we can also discover together and learn together about pieces that usually fall under the radar and that are barely discussed in any other platform. So thank you so much for being here. Thank you for your presence and support. Please hit the like button on the way out. It really does help. Thank you especially for the Magician, JJ, and Basil's Bezels for your super chats and super stickers. They are always appreciated. And again, thank you for your kind words, for your encouraging remarks and comments. I'll be back with you tomorrow. I don't think I will do a show tonight, but if I do, you'll be the first to know, of course. But I can't wait for the next time I'll get to talk watches and style with you guys. Until then, peace.